You can come in a little tighter, gentlemen. Don't be shy. Afternoon. My name is Paul Penzone. I'm the Maricopa County Sheriff. I'm here today with Yavapai County Sheriff David Rhodes, Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, and Coconino County Chief Deputy Brett Axland. We're here today just to discuss some of our concerns as it relates to the expiration of Title 42 tomorrow, the border in general. And I say this with recognition that you see a small select group of sheriffs here today, and although our voices will be unique, this is a consensus. The sheriffs in Arizona, unlike politicians, stand united when it relates to the rule of law. We are unwavering in our efforts and our commitment to ensure that we are not only providing public safety, but that we hold everyone accountable to the laws. Without that type of a commitment, the laws become meaningless, and therefore our profession does, and we won't tolerate nor stand for that. So I would tell you, the rule of law is not partisan. It has no agenda. It is intended to be inclusive, but it only survives if it's respected. Not just respected by the community that we serve, but respected by the highest ranks in our nation. The very people who write the laws and those who are elected and empowered to be lawmakers. Citizenship is no different. It's the most valuable asset that we have in a free nation. And it has considerable to offer to every individual, whether you are born into it or you wish to earn it. It has no agenda, it's nonpartisan, it's inclusive, and much like the rule of law, it only survives if it's respected. And I am concerned that our government, when I state this, I'm not pointing my finger to an administration or an individual or anyone in particular, but collectively, it is my opinion, our government has failed its people. It has failed its people for decades now because the insecurity of our border is not it's a federal responsibility, but it has become a local problem. The failure to properly address issues of unlawful immigration at our border bleeds into our communities throughout the state and throughout the nation. It adversely affects our ability to provide public safety for our community. And when I say that, I'm not saying that as though everyone who comes across is intended to commit crime. But if your first step across our border is in an unlawful fashion, it makes it difficult to expect that that person will respect the other laws that we ask them or demand that they abide by. There's a saying, you teach people how to treat you. In America, it's our job to ensure that we teach the rest of the world our expectations as it relates to being a law-abiding citizen, a law-abiding guest, a law-abiding person who is pursuing job opportunities. And if you're not law-abiding, then those things don't apply to you. Those opportunities are no longer yours. In this profession, and now I've been in it for over 30 years, what started out as enforcing the laws and providing public safety has turned into a lot of other responsibilities. Now we're expected not only to be responsible for violent property crimes, but school safety for our children. Mental illness, drug addiction, homelessness. And now you see that the issue at the border will become the responsibility of every local law enforcement professional in our nation. And what's occurring tomorrow with Title 42 is not the impetus of the problem, it's just another straw on the camel's back. And I guess what needs to be said that hasn't, or at least isn't frequently enough, is it's not okay, it's not acceptable, and it is something that we can correct. Our nation is capable of a lot of things, and the idea that we're not capable of securing our border and improving and addressing the failures in our immigration system is nonsense. They can coexist. We can continue to be a welcoming nation of people of all walks of life who wish to come here in a lawful capacity and potentially pursue citizenship and provide that opportunity if they in fact are being law-abiding. And we can be disciplined and we can be focused on the emphasis of securing our border so that you are obligated to meet our expectations when it relates to how you will enter and how you will spend your time in this nation. So quite frankly, the time for excuses is long overdue. Excuse me. No, that's accurate, actually. The time for excuses is gone on too long. And the time for solutions is overdue. I am not, I'm an elected official, but I'm not a politician. And there are a lot of elected officials that have had many opportunities through the years to work together to resolve both the challenges, border security, immigration reform. And it is either selfishness or arrogance or partisanship, but it sure is not selflessness and leadership that you can't come together and find a way to improve our nation. Because we will not survive what we're trying to overcome. You cannot expect that we have homelessness at the tune of, I think, about 25,000 people in Arizona, and we can't even resolve that problem right now with resources, and we will bring additional populations in with the same challenges and be incapable of meeting that demand. Once someone comes into our nation through an unlawful process, but then is given the opportunity to be heard in the court, how are they expected to survive and make a living and care for their own family if they can't work legally? And if you can't work legally to make a living and put food on the table or pay for housing, then what are your options? These are all things that need to be discussed, and must be resolved. So I would just tell you before I turn it over to Sheriff David Rhodes, we must first and foremost make an unwavering commitment to address the issue at the border in partnership with our federal partners, border sheriffs, municipal law enforcement, to ensure that it's stable and safe for national security. We must restore legislation that relates to the seizure of ill-gotten goods, assets that should be forfeited for profits for those organized groups, cartels and others, who are making money off of human trafficking and sex trafficking and drug trafficking because of issues at our border. We have to properly fund and reimburse local law enforcement and county agencies for the resources that are spent addressing this issue that is a federal responsibility. We have to reform our immigration system so that people who wish to come here and make a life for themselves choose and commit to doing it lawfully. Because I'll just close by saying citizenship, although some of us are born into it, others have earned it through a different path, is what is most defining and should be most celebrated in our nation. But you tarnish it when you disrespect the laws and the processes that are in place to protect it. And that's where we exist now. Who do we choose to be going forward? People that celebrate citizenship and reward those who earn it, or tarnishing the very thing that defines our nation and separates us from other places where maybe they don't have the same commitment to value and appreciation for what it stands for. It's not a four-letter word. It's something that defines greatness because of the opportunities in this nation. So it's time we started protecting that. With that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff David Rhodes.
My name is David Rhodes. I am the sheriff of Yavapai County and the president of the Arizona Sheriff's Association. And this topic has been on our minds. We've had a lot of communication in the weeks leading up to this. And I just want to say the border sheriffs are down on the border today. They're working with the troops. They're working with the CBT to deal with the situation. They couldn't be here today, but we've had a lot of discussion. We really have a message. We have a message to a few different groups of people, a few different institutions that we want to get out today. Number one, we wanted to say this to all law enforcement, federal, local, and state, who are down on the border, that are dealing with this crisis right now, that are working, and they have been leading up to this entire situation. We see you guys and gals. We know what you're doing. We appreciate it. We support you. We're behind you 100%. We're fighting to get you resources. We're doing everything that we can to support you in your efforts. To the federal administration who's created the policies that have led to this situation, this is not working. All the sheriffs unanimously agree. We have to secure the border now. This experiment, whatever it was, has failed us, and it's crystal clear. Anybody with eyes that can see the video and the pictures of what's happening down there can see that this does not work. We know that the border is not going to be secured overnight. We understand that, but we need a major shift in policy. To our state executive branch and our state partners that we're working with, the governor, we met with the Sheriff's Association, met with Governor Hobbs yesterday in Tucson. We've reached out in every way that we can. We're partnering with them. We are here to work with you to keep Arizona's citizens safe. The Arizona Sheriff's Association is 100% committed to public safety and doing whatever is necessary within our roles as sheriffs to make that happen. However, there is one particular policy that is beginning to percolate, that's beginning to happen, and that is street drop-offs of immigrants who've come across the border, been processed by ICE or CBT, given their court date, whatever it is that they're doing, and they have nowhere to go. Those drop-offs in different communities around this state need to be communicated to the local government and to public safety, to law enforcement in those communities. We deserve to know that. We need to know that so that we can react and deal with it accordingly. If you are an NGO and you're receiving tax money to transport, to make these transports, we expect your cooperation with us. We have a message for the people who are the immigrants that are coming across the border, the people that are being let go in Arizona. For whatever reason that you're here, or however long it is that you're here, our expectation is you are going to follow the laws of this state. You are going to follow the laws of America. And if you don't, you will be prosecuted. And that especially goes to the drug trafficking, human smuggling organizations that are profiteering in the state. Finally, to the citizens of Arizona, the people that we are charged to protect, and this is from all the sheriffs, we want to make sure that you know that we understand your concerns, we understand your fears, and we are working very hard. We're going to keep you safe. We got this. We're not going to let this turn into a full-blown situation in your communities. But it's going to take everybody. It's going to take partnerships. It's going to take collaboration. These are the messages that the Arizona Sheriff's Association would like to get out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Mark Lamb.
Those are two hard acts to follow. I echo what both of these sheriffs have said thus far. You can see some of these pictures behind us here. These pictures I think were taken this morning from the Yuma sector. Just this morning, Sheriff Wilmot from the Yuma sector sent out a message to the rest of the sheriffs. They had 800 people in custody already, and I think this was by 8 or 9 in the morning this morning, with another 400 people standing on the other side of the wall waiting to come across. The busiest sector right now is the Tucson sector, which comprises of Cochise County, Pima County, Santa Cruz County, and Pinal County. We are seeing exorbitant numbers coming in, and we lead the way in gotaways. Almost every month we lead the way in gotaways. I want to go back to I'm a very constitutionally minded, very simple guy. The Constitution, the preamble to the Constitution, the charges of that are, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for a common defense. Those are just the first 3 charges in the Constitution, all of which we are failing on the federal level at those areas. Not our partners. Our partners are overwhelmed. They're working hard. The Border Patrol agents are exhausted. Their morale is low. They feel no support from the federal level. And with the message that's being sent, you can say all day long at the federal level that the border is not open. But if your actions say otherwise, then the cartels and the people that are trying to come here to this country illegally, that's what they take note of. And the actions of this federal government are that they are not enforcing the laws that are on the books. Yes, Title 42 is going away tomorrow. We still have Title 8 in place, which is actually what we are supposed to be using on the federal level. Now, this is a federal issue. In 2010, they passed SB 1070 in the state of Arizona, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. It was very embattled. But the Ninth Circuit overturned that, reaffirming that it is the federal government's responsibility and the sole responsibility of the federal government to secure our southern border and to protect our communities. Now, as sheriffs, we're doing the best we can. If the federal government doesn't want to enforce their law, our message to the people of Arizona is that the Arizona sheriffs will enforce the law. And if you break the law, a state law, we will hold you accountable. If you are smuggling people, if you are being paid by the cartels to bring people into this country, much like what I found in my county at about 9 this morning, 2 vehicles traveling tandem from Superior down the US 60. This is not a border area. This is an area that is in the suburbs, just outside the suburbs of the Phoenix Valley. 2 vehicles traveling tandem. We finally got them stopped. One vehicle had 11 illegals in it. The other vehicle had 14 illegals in the vehicle. 25 people total in 2 stops along the US 60, and we are doing this every single day. I went back to the Congress recently and I was able to testify, and we talked about the impact this is having, not just on Arizona, but the point we made was what happens in our backyard today will be in your front yard tomorrow. The majority of these folks will not stay in Arizona, nor will the drugs that are being trafficked in here, which, by the way, 50% of all illegal drugs coming into America are coming through the borders of Arizona right now. People in this country are relying on local law enforcement in this country and on the Border Patrol to stop the human trafficking, to stop the drug trafficking from coming into not just our communities, but communities across this country. I was recently in Wisconsin with the sheriffs. They were talking about the same exact things that we're talking about now. So you can say that this is a border community issue. It's not. It's not just a border state issue. This is becoming an American issue. And it shouldn't matter what party you are. We should all want to defend our borders. We should all want to protect life, liberty, not just ours of American folks and from people from Arizona, but also for those who are being abused and taken advantage of by the cartels every single day, to the tunes of thousands of people. Just a couple more statistics before I go. The number now, they expect to exceed 10,000 for today across all the borders. That's up from typically about 6,000, 7,000, what we've been experiencing. Those numbers are probably going to go up even more just based on the intel we have with all the groups that are on the other side of the border. But I think the message here today, I thought that Sheriff Penzone nailed it. This is not about politics. This is about putting people first, not just Arizonans, like I said, putting the people that are being abused, that are being trafficked, putting those who are losing loved ones every day to the leading cause of death in America, which is fentanyl. These are the things that we care about. We want to protect our communities. We want to enforce our laws. We want to enforce the justice which this country was built on. We want to ensure the domestic tranquility of our citizens. And we want to help our federal government provide for a common defense and protect our communities from what we're seeing every day. So with that, I just appreciate you being out here. I have said before, you play such a key role in the press in delivering this very important message, not just to the people of Arizona, but all across this country as to what's going on. Like Sheriff Rhodes said, our eyes don't deceive us. What you see is a real pictures and what is happening every day. And we want to do what we can to help our federal partners stop that, help them curtail this issue. If we can help provide some input as to common sense immigration reform, we can help to do that. But ultimately, we want the people of Arizona to hear us today, and is that we are dedicated as sheriffs to protecting our communities.
I do want to clarify one thing, just because I have to make sure I keep myself and my office out of trouble. Our office is under 2 federal court orders that restrict us from being involved in any enforcement of immigration law, or even asking anyone of their status in the country if there's a concern relative to whether they are lawfully in the nation. Since I've taken this office, though, I have allowed ICE to have a station in our jails, and I asked for my folks to give me an estimate today, a rough estimate, and we project that about 10,000 inmates who were in our custody were, ICE was given the opportunity to take custody of them upon release because they believed that they had potentially entered the nation unlawfully. So we are not involved in any enforcement. We do not engage in any way that is in conflict with the federal orders, because we would be in contempt of court, but we still try to be a good partner to our federal partners who are responsible for those duties. With that, I'm happy to navigate the space of whatever questions you have for any of us here at the table. I'll just kind of raise your hand, please, so we don't get everybody yelling. I'll start with you. If you introduce yourself and tell me who you're with. Down here, then I'll come up to you.
Okay.
You're first,
Stephanie
yes.
Bennett, Fox 10. I guess for you guys, you mentioned those the border sheriffs along the border are there. Are you guys going to be working with them directly, maybe sending deputies across county lines to help out at all? And I guess just how much of your resources daily do you have to divert from everyday crimes to border-related issues?
Well, you're closer. Why don't you take it, Mark?
Yeah, we're working together as much as we can, but we're all overwhelmed. All of our communities are being flooded. I just got word, we've been getting word, and we just got word again today, that they intend on releasing a lot of people into communities. I think they're probably going to start in Cochise County, Yuma County. Tucson will probably be getting an influx of people being released. They notified me that likely it might be Casa Grande tomorrow. So we expect to see a lot of these groups being released, which is going to tax our resources. As it is already, I have an anti-smuggling unit that is completely dedicated to trying to stop drug flow and human. We look at it as that these people likely are being enslaved by the cartels, being extorted by the cartels, being taken advantage by the cartels. So every time we make a stop, we feel like we're saving lives, saving people from getting into the cartel's grasp even further. So we're going to continue to assist Border Patrol on that. I have an aviation unit. Not only are we going to, the governor, you heard her talk about dedicating, helping the sheriffs in search and rescue as these temperatures start to increase. We're going to see a lot more search and rescue calls out in the desert. So we expect to expend a lot of resources with our aviation unit doing search and rescue. My canines, I have 4 canines that are completely dedicated to stopping drugs and human flow into the country and guns and money back to Mexico, which is all 4 of those things are problems. So we expend a lot of resources. We don't know what kind of reimbursement. The governor has talked to us about some reimbursement. Whatever money you apply, which there is none, I don't know how much there is anyway, but that's going to go pretty fast. And so, yeah, we're all expending resources, especially along the border. If you talk to Sheriff Daniels, I think he has spent $1 million or something already on border-related crimes. They've booked over, I think, close to 900 people into his jail for border-related crimes. So, yeah, this is having a tremendous impact on us, on our budgets, on our resources, on our manpower. But you know what? It's what we signed up for. It's the job we agreed to do, and we're willing to help our federal partners do what we can to achieve that and ultimately protect our communities. So we don't complain about the money we have to spend. We just find a way to do it, and we do it effectively.
I will just add this, it is my opinion, I talked to my colleagues, that if we're expected, so what is the trickle down? The trickle down is that if someone enters into your space and they're existing, as I stated earlier, in a unlawful capacity, or even though they may have now received the opportunity to stay lawfully, but they're pending a hearing, how do they exist from that point forward? Or are they in a situation where they're trying to pursue labor, now they're violating a labor law? So there are all different types of peripheral crimes that could occur, not by someone who is intent on being a criminal, but in order to survive, they do. And then there's a criminal element also. So as you heard a couple times, it depletes our resources, but I'm of the belief that if that force multiplier that puts more burden on law enforcement occurs because our government has failed us at the border, then they should be paying the tab. They should be reimbursing us for the costs incurred because of these additional responsibilities and resources that are depleted. So I don't know how that works. I plan on talking to the Attorney General and see if there's a way we could either send a bill or send a lawsuit, because we are a border state. We are most impacted. It's not just on the border, but it's throughout it. So you were next, I believe, 15.
Yeah, I'm Ashley Cordes with ABC15. Let me turn this on. There we go. I have a few questions. The first one, I spoke with Yuma County supervisor yesterday, and they were telling me, a lot of these migrants that they're seeing crossing already, that about 97% of them can pay their way, for a flight being purchased to travel somewhere, that many of them don't need necessarily a sponsor, even though they have to put one down. Is there, right now when you're looking at things, do you see that possibly the cartel is working to help these people, giving them money like, hey, we'll help you get across, but you're going to have to do something for us later?
It is absolutely a for-profit industry that involves violence and abuse. They see everyone who's trying to cross the desert as property. They will force you into debt. They will hold you accountable, and if you fail to repay your debt and then some, They have the grip on what are likely family members that are behind in Mexico. So it is, and that's where if you look at the United States, if we want to be thoughtful, we want to address this issue, it is not cold-hearted to secure our borders and define and improve our immigration system, because if we do so, what we're doing is we're eliminating this criminal institution that is profiting by the opportunity we're creating in an unlawful process. So it goes hand in hand. If you truly care about the humanitarian effort, then do more at ports of entry to give people the opportunity to come into the nation and pursue immigration. I think the number, if I remember correctly, Ellis Island, late 1800s, 1950, processed about 12 million people. That was with pencil and paper, and kept documentation of it. You're telling me in this sophisticated world that we live in now that we can't do more to improve our immigration system so that the cartels aren't the ones profiting at the blood, sweat, tears, and lives of those who wish to come to the United States and have a better opportunity for themselves and their families? It's not naive, it's ignorant, it's arrogant, it's irresponsible, and it's time for us to correct it. I'm gonna go back.
That was really good, by the way.
I want to just.
That was like a mic drop. I don't even know how I even follow that up. I wanted to talk just real quick about the humanitarian thing, because oftentimes if we're trying to protect our communities from border crimes, we're deemed as not being humane. I will tell you, I don't see any of those people calling me inhumane on the border with us, pulling people out of the deserts, giving them IVs to save their lives, stopping them from being trafficked by the cartels. I only see my people there. And I challenge any one of you that want to come out and see it for yourselves. I would love to take you out. We will show you just how well we treat these folks when we do come across. And Border Patrol's the same way. They're getting treated humanely. That is not the issue. That is oftentimes a political talking point to disparage the work that we are doing to try to secure our communities and to secure our border. And I would hope that as a media, you would push back on that as well, because we are working hard. And the men and women who put on this badge every day, they put their heart and soul into protecting these people and treating them good and trying to do what we can in a situation that is awfully, it's bad. And we're trying to hold the federal government responsible for a job that is theirs. And every time you try to do something as a state, to do something to help it, they are there to swoop in and stop you, whether it's Texas or Arizona. So we would love a better partnership. We'd love for the federal government to do their job. But in the end, I would hope that our people are never deemed as not being humane, because we are. And I'm going to tell you one more story, and some of you have heard me tell it. And you answer me if this is humane. We had a woman that we caught a while back. She had a baggie full of pills, like 50 pills in her baggie. We asked her what the pills were, not knowing. She said, well, when I was going to cross the border, I knew I'd be raped multiple times. These are morning after pills. What is humane about that? I would say the opposite. I would say that is as inhumane as humanly possible, and it is certainly not the American way.
Sheriff Lim, I've got a question for you. They're asking, what's the common areas are where we see undocumented immigrants coming into Pinal County? Also, can you comment on how rural towns are preparing for this massive influx of people?
Yeah, great question. Pinal County tends to be, we're a pass-through county. I will tell you, I'll be the first to tell you, not a lot of it stays in my county. Obviously, some level of fentanyl, because we're having fentanyl poisonings like everybody else. It's on the rise. We deal with a lot through the southern border, through the southern area of our county, which is going to be in the TO reservation, where the cartels will push people up through the deserts on foot. We also deal with them heavily on the I-10 interstate. We have since, they shifted on us because we were hammering them so hard. They now shifted that over to the US 60, which is alarming because they're taking them up through a lot of our small communities. And I will tell you, I think that, and the answer to your last question, as far as what are the small rural communities doing, Yuma's one of those. Sierra Vista, Hereford, all of these areas are rural communities. Casa Grande would be, I would say, is rural. Eloy. We're going to do the best we can to work with those police departments. And I know the sheriffs are going to do the same thing in Yuma County, Cochise County. I would expect you're probably going to eventually see dumps throughout the state. I think the governor in her plan had plans on transporting people throughout the state. So you're going to see them in Flagstaff. You're going to see them in other parts of this state. And your question is spot on. This is going to be an issue that all of us are going to have to deal with. And we are trying to open those lines of communication with the federal government and with the governor's office. And we appreciate her taking time yesterday. We need those lines of communication so that we can properly prepare and address when those people are being dumped in our communities, especially communities that just are not equipped for it. Yuma County, I mean, the hospital has spent, it's a private hospital, it's spent well over 26 million, I think, is what it's been, that they paid out for people that were here illegally that needed to be treated. So yes, it has an impact on all the small communities. Communication is the first step for us to being able to absorb that and deal with it, much to our chagrin.
There's also a question for you, Sheriff Lamb. So I talked to some people in Nogales today. I'm going to be heading down there tomorrow, and they said, you know, this is something we deal with constantly. It's not just an issue when Title 42 is coming to an end. So I'm curious, you talked about your intel on the other side of the border, what they're seeing there today, maybe like in an area like Nogales. Who is this intel with the Sheriff's Department, these different groups, and what are they seeing on the other side, you know, potentially preparing for this influx tomorrow and the days after?
I'm glad you brought that up because they're right. This isn't a new problem. I'm glad that we're finally talking about it. It's sad that it's taken this long for Title 42 to go away to recognize the problem. This has been over the last 2 years, I've had a 377% increase in traffic stops involving human smuggling, 461% increase in pursuits involving human smuggling, 610% increase in fentanyl seizures over the last 2 years. This problem has been there and it's been growing day by day. Title 42 will only exacerbate that problem. There is intel that there are groups of 600,000 people moving through Mexico towards this way. There are more intel of groups in Panama and all these different places that are moving here towards our southern border because we can't send a strong enough message to the people that our borders are not open and they need to stop them at those places. So there's an intel from Border Patrol, from the Mexican government and military. And then as far as what Nogales sees is going to be different from what Yuma sees. And just one more quick point. What we see in the Tucson sector are going to predominantly be Hispanic or Mexican males and females and Guatemalans. What you see in Yuma, and Nogales probably would be the same. What you see in Yuma are Russians and Africans and people from India and people from all over the world, 140 plus different countries. So it does vary from place to place. So I would challenge you, when you're looking at the border, please look at all aspects of it because it's a little bit different in all the different areas. I don't know if that.
Yeah, no, I think so. But like you talked about, like these massive groups of people moving through Mexico. Just on the other side of the border, though, are you seeing groups of people there in line or in groups just waiting to cross over as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think the videos show them. Just like I said this morning, Sheriff Wilmot at 8, 9 in the morning was saying 800 had already come through with another 400 where they could actually see them right on the other side. They're doing it in waves. You got to remember, every time they push more people through, they're also pushing more and more drugs through with it that are probably going undetected because we're so bogged down with all the people being trafficked in. And so you're not going to see it like everybody in the entire world is going to show up tomorrow. This is going to be an ongoing problem. And it's probably going to get worse and worse, especially if we fail to address it on a federal level. And it's really as simple as just enforcing the law. That's it. If you enforce the law, that's the first step to it.
I have a question for you, Sheriff Lamb.
Let me say something about, there was a couple of questions there that I don't want to go unanswered on behalf of the Arizona Sheriff's Association. Our strategy has been to work with the governor's office in the state budget to restore the Border Strike Force funding so that money could go to the rural counties, to form task forces, to embolden task forces that can deal with the ongoing organized crime. And that money was restored in the budget or in the preliminary budget. as you saw, which is a very important point because small counties don't have the resources to just hire more people immediately or bring in more law enforcement officers immediately. It doesn't exist. So what you have to do, and you know, the funding mechanisms, the tax base in these counties never contemplated having to cope with transnational, multi-billion-dollar smuggling organizations setting up forced labor, setting up drug trafficking, setting up sex trafficking, all of these things in those small areas. And what we're seeing is cartels, they gravitate towards these areas because they think there's a less sophisticated system of law enforcement. And we're trying to counter that. That's one of the things that the state of Arizona has, and of course the federal government has, is the ability to delegate resources immediately to certain areas. And so we're asking them to do that. To your point, we were on the call with DHS today, daily briefing that's going on. They estimated 110,000 people were just south of the border at the different ports of entry waiting to come in. They also warned us that many people were migrating up through the Central American countries, coming to, trying to get up to the border, believing that now is the time. And this is the crisis of confidence that we are talking about. People believe if they get into America now, they're going to get to stay. And they're right in a lot of ways. They're right in a lot of ways. The other crisis of confidence is among our citizens, and we're hearing it as sheriffs all the time. They don't believe the laws are going to be enforced, and they don't feel like the government is doing enough to protect them. So these are the strategies that we're trying to deploy to react in these rural areas.
Any of you guys can answer the question, really. My name is Mike, Fair News reporter with Univision. Just to understand the process, a lot of these migrants want to turn themselves in for a court hearing. We've been mentioning it. But if a sheriff agency were to detain them, what would the process look like? Would you turn them over to Border Patrol, or it depends on what you guys found with the migrant?
Two processes.
Yeah, you have two different circumstances you're talking about there. In circumstances where sheriffs do have the authority to detain someone because they're potentially in violation, which is not my office, of immigration law, then they can transfer that person over to a federal agent to take custody of them, to put them into a detention center and put them in front of an immigration judge. If it is a criminal offense, in other words, they committed a state crime and they come into our jail, and it just so happens, as I stated earlier, that ICE exists there, they interview that person, they find out that they are potentially unlawfully in the country, they want to take custody of them. At the conclusion of their stay in our jail, when a judge deems that they're set for release, then we are going to have ICE take custody of them at that immediate time and transfer them into the federal space. So two different things, but in either situation, when appropriate, they're going to see that at the conclusion, most likely, of the process, the state process.
Can I ask a question? I can ask this one more. What are the expectations when it comes to National Guard? You mentioned safety and protection towards National Guard. Are we expecting more military at the border, or what would that look like in the next days?
Well, what's happened historically, and I think currently, is the National Guard is not going there to actually be in enforcement positions on the border. Their job is to supplement the fundamental roles that don't require enforcement duties, so it frees up those agents to be involved in enforcement. And that kind of falls back to this issue. You saw the images, and they're real. So if suddenly you have a surge of hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are coming into not a port of entry, but another space and trying to enter the country, and they're being detained there and they're going through this process, that requires staffing. That requires agents to be at a high volume into that space to address it. So what does that mean in other areas of the border? It means that they're going to be neglected because there aren't enough resources to cover the other spaces. That opens the opportunity and the windows for those with unlawful intent, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, we already talked about, to find those gaps. So this demand isn't just about dealing with the demand in that space. It is the depletion of resources from other areas of need that gives the criminals the opportunity to take advantage of those vacancies. You want to add something, Sheriff?
Yeah, just on the processes of it, if we were to stop, for example, that vehicle, we stopped 25 folks today. We can only hold them as long as it would be normal for Border Patrol to come and pick them up. If Border Patrol says, we can't come get them, then we don't have another choice, we have to release them. We don't have the ability because there is no state law that says you can actually hold somebody or arrest somebody for being in the country illegally. Like the sheriff said, they would have to commit a state crime for us to be able to hold them or arrest them or take them to our jail. And as far as what it takes, just so the average Arizonan knows, right now those court dates that people are giving are between 3 and 5 years from now. 3 to 5 years from now, they expect that those people will go to court. How many more judges will you need to process 10,000 people a day, court dates, 3 to 5 years from now? So the system is broken. There's a lot that needs to be fixed. And I think sometimes we don't actually look at just how dramatic the numbers are and what kind of problem we're creating.
I was told that, during the initial processing, vetting the person that's trying to come in, you try to look through their background check. But in some of these countries, it's hard. You can't just call and easily get a background check on all of these people. Do you believe that some are being let into the country but could have a violent past or be a violent offender?
The answer to that question is without a doubt, yes. And, this was a topic of conversation today with CBT, and they do the best that they can. They fingerprint people, they query databases that are available to them, but there's only so much information available. And I'm glad you brought up that point because many criminals exploit the system. In fact, they're the ones that are skilled at it. The people that you see showing up with kids and different things like that and asking for asylum are far less adept at navigating this system. I'll give you one example that we were briefed on: U visas. U visas are issued, about 10,000 of them a year are approved or issued, but there's a backlog of about 350,000 of them. And what it is, a U visa is basically, it can be authorized by local law enforcement if you are a victim of a crime in this country because they don't want you to be deported, so that you can testify in your case against you and the crime that was committed against you. Well, criminals in other countries recognize that, and they come to America and fabricate crimes that occurred against them and ask small agencies to approve these U visas. And so you have this huge backlog. 300,000 of them exist. They're only issuing 10,000 a year. The rest of those people get to stay in the country legally indefinitely. That's one example of the broken immigration system that we were talking about. And I just wanted to get back to the ICE detainers. Some of the counties are in partnership through U.S. Code, we call it 287G, partnership with ICE, in which we can request our own detainers based on probable cause that somebody's in the country illegally. And what's important to know is that if people are arrested for committing a state crime and booked into a county jail, just like Sheriff Penzone was talking about, ICE will be notified. And we are requesting that CBT and ICE be more aggressive about those deportations of people that are in the country and committed a crime. They need to be deported.
I didn't say you could have one last question, did I?
If I can have the time.
Oh, you asked very nicely, Sheriff.
Thank you. I was also hearing that, people have to, when they're crossing, list down a sponsor. And, the other side of that is I ask, are they verifying that it's an actual person, a family member, friend, somebody that can actually, have the resources to help the person crossing. And the Yuma County supervisor said there's, we're not able to do that. We're only able to do so much, and just with the amount of people that are crossing, we don't have the resources and time to do all of that. So my question is, I'm sure a lot of people are coming in, putting a sponsor, and it could be nobody, it could be a phone number to nobody. Is there concern that a lot of these people are going to be sleeping on the streets or trying to break into places to find a place to go?
I think, and it just goes back to what you've heard from the other sheriffs, a person in desperation is going to do anything and everything necessary if they understand the system to work it to their advantage. And that's what the immigration system has become for those who are pursuing opportunities to come into our nation, and oftentimes through an unlawful course. So Yes, 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 and yes. Everything that you envision as a potential possibility is a reality. We are not here, though, today to it is doom and gloom. This is about empowerment. This is about being honest about the issue, educating the community from people who serve and protect. Our entire lives have been committed to caring for a community. And no nation can thrive if it's unsafe. So talk about the economy, talk about education, talk about healthcare. All those things are so important to us, but they all crumble if you don't have a foundation of a safe nation. And in order to accomplish this, we need a commitment, and we're calling on our federal partners to work with us. We're not pointing the fingers. We're saying, we're here with you, for you, by you, to resolve and correct this issue. But let's stop pretending like it doesn't exist. It does, it has, and it continues to until we say enough is enough, which is today. So going forward, the things that you talk about, the loopholes and everything else, can all be closed. We can find a way. We've spent, I don't know how much money through the pandemic, giving money away, addressing other needs, fighting in foreign lands, all these other areas that may be priorities important, but nothing more important than securing the homeland first and foremost. So we're just calling on you to use us as stakeholders at the table with considerable experience when you write legislation, when you talk about operations, when you deliver funding, and when we find ways to address the humanitarian need of this challenge. So I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues, just with gratitude to giving us this opportunity. I am blessed and fortunate that I work with the best law enforcement professionals in the nation here in Arizona, in the Arizona Sheriff's Association, and I hope you guys are okay with me saying that. And you're like, yeah, the way Paul, we'll say it ourselves. But I joke about the big guy. I mean, he's a little bit country, I'm a little bit rock and roll. But when it comes to law enforcement, we sing the same song, and that is, the rule of law will apply in Arizona to everybody equally. Don't cross the line. You don't have to worry about crossing us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.